This week we are dealing with noun clauses in sentence diagramming. Um, Keep in mind that a noun clause, even though it consists of several words, is replacing a single noun in the diagram. So anywhere you see a subject or a noun or a direct object or indirect object or an object of a preposition in your diagrams, think of it as a single unit that just then expands out to include the clause. The one thing I've done differently this week is I've underlined your red flag words, either the interrogatives or the expletives that introduce the noun clause. And then you can assume that whatever follows is the noun clause. Also keep in mind that with noun clauses, you're going to have an extra set of subject and verb and another sentence pattern to diagram. So you'll have a sentence pattern for the main sentence and a sentence pattern to identify for the noun clause. But we're going to follow the exact same process. We start in most cases with the main sentence and we do subject and verb. So our first subject is you, and then our verbs are do and know. The order has changed because we're asking a question, but they're still your two verbs and they go together. So our subject is you and do know. Then we hit this red flag word, our interrogative, and so we know we're shifting to a noun clause. So if we look at our main subject, we have you do know. Know is our main verb. You know what. This is our what. It's functioning as the direct object. So we can know that this is a pattern 7 because we have subject, verb, and direct object. See, this whole thing is a direct object. So that's a pattern 7. So we know that we're going to put our pedestal in that direct object slot. And now we can diagram our noun clause pretty much as we would a regular sentence. William Blake is our subject. We have a be verb and then an adjective. So that's a pattern 2. And then keep in mind that interrogatives are part of the diagram of the noun clause. So they fit in where they would normally fit in. Why is an adverb question. And so it is diagrammed below the verb as an adverb. So we have a pattern 7 with a pattern 2 noun clause. Excuse me. We start out this one pretty simply. We have our subject and verb, he is, and then an adjective. So subject, be verb, adjective is a pattern 2. We put our modifier here, and then we come across a prepositional phrase. So here's our prepositional phrase, and here's our interrogative, and then our sentence. So what is he famous for? We put the preposition below famous, and then remember that nouns are always on that horizontal line. So this one is functioning as the object of the preposition. Picture just a simple noun here. He is famous for something. And that something is what we're going to diagram right now on a pedestal. So that pedestal goes on the line for the object of the preposition, and we do it just like we would normally. Our subject is he, and then we have a compound verb. So we do our little bracketed structure with the conjunction as we did last week. And then he wrote and drew what? And that is our answer. In this case, the interrogative, even though it precedes the verbs, is acting as the direct object of those verbs. So that is where that goes, and that's why it's in green. He wrote and drew what? So we have subject, action verbs, direct objects makes a pattern 7. This one is the exception to doing the main sentence first. In this case, we start right off with our interrogative, so we know we're starting with the noun clause. And since we're starting with the noun clause, we're going to just keep going with it. So our subject is whoever, and then we have the verb reads. Reads what? Reads poetry. So we have subject, transitive verb, direct object. That's a pattern 7. We put in our possessive and our prepositional phrase, which is telling us how to read, so that goes below the verb. And we've got our noun clause. So now I'm going to picture this whole thing and just simplify it, distill it down to an N. So we've got a noun and then a verb. So I know that the noun is functioning as the subject. So I'm going to put this on the main line. The pedestal goes in the subject slot. And then we have our two verbs, will find. Find is the main verb. So my question is going to be find what? And my noun, that's the direct object, is find simplicity. So now we can stop and say we've got a subject as this clause. So that whole thing is an S, an action verb, and a direct object. And then we have our two modifiers that go below simplicity. So this is a pattern 7, both pattern 7s in this one. Scholars debate, subject, verb, and then we have our interrogative. So we know our noun clause is coming up. Scholars debate what? Well, they debate this whole thing. So that's our something, that's our noun that is functioning as the direct object. So it's going to fit in that slot. And since I know I have subject, transitive verb, and then a noun as the direct object, I can identify that the main sentence is a pattern 7. So in this direct object slot, I put my pedestal and I continue on. I've got a subject is poems. My verb is demonstrate. Demonstrate what? My direct object is talents. So that is subject, verb, direct objects, pattern 7. His goes with talents, best goes with demonstrate, and which, our interrogative here, is modifying the noun poems. Or you can think about it in terms of which is an adjective question if we go back to that parts of speech thing from the very beginning of the semester. So that's an adjective, goes below the subject, go below the noun it's modifying. Okay. You as our subject, should know are the verbs, and know what? We should know our noun clause. We should know something. Subject, transitive verb, direct object, noun clause. We stick our also in there, and we've got our pattern 7 for our main sentence. We put our pedestal in the direct object slot, and then we can diagram our noun clause just as we would our normal sentence. We have our subject is Blake, the verb is, artist is our noun, the subjective complement. So with subject, be verb, noun, we have a pattern 3. And then we have our two modifiers. That is an expletive. It doesn't really have a meaning in the sentence. It doesn't serve a function except to connect. It's the connective tissue. So because it's not functioning as anything except just connecting, we put it above the verb, that dotted line on the little ledge here. So it's in the sentence, but it's not really contributing to the meaning is what that means. So we have a pattern 7 for our main sentence and a pattern 3 for our noun clause. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated. Again, if you isolate prepositional phrases and take things in chunks, it makes it manageable. We start with one. That's a noun and that's our subject. So we're going to start with that. Then we have a prepositional phrase, which I'm going to skip because I'm looking for subject and verb. Here's my verb is depicts. So far I have one depicts, and one depicts what? Pilgrims. And then we have another prepositional phrase and another prepositional phrase. So I can kind of stop right now and I say I have a subject, an action verb, and a direct object. That is my pattern 7 for the main sentence. Now I can back up and put things in. What one are we talking about? We're talking about one of his well-known engravings. So the preposition goes on the slant, the noun goes on the horizontal, the possessive and well-known functions as a single adjective describing engravings. We get our possessive for pilgrims. And what pilgrims are we talking about? It's those that are on their way. So this prepositional phrase is modifying pilgrims, and the possessive goes below. And what is this way we're talking about? Their way to where Thomas Becket died in Canterbury. So we've got another prepositional phrase, modifying way. So we put to, and then as soon as we start this prepositional phrase, we see there's our interrogative. So it's following the preposition. It's functioning as the object of the preposition. So then we do the same thing we've done before. Thomas Becket is our subject. Died is our verb. And then he died, I ran out of room because this is such a complicated sentence. He died in Canterbury is the prepositional phrase you can't see. And where is an adverb question. So it goes below the verb as well. So our main line here for our noun clause is subject and action verb, pattern 6. This one again, we start right off with our expletive, that red flag word that tells us we're starting with the noun clause. So I'm going to skip the whether or not, and I'm going to go to my subject and verb. He was. He was what? He was a mystic is our subjective complement. So we have subject, be verb, noun is a pattern 3. And we put our whether or not above the verb because it's just there to connect and make things flow. So here we have our noun and then a verb. So we know that the noun is the subject. It goes in that subject slot. We put our vertical line to separate. Remains is a linking verb. We have our noun question. So we have subject, linking verb. Noun is the subjective complement, makes this a pattern 5. And then we put our modifiers in. We wonder, subject verb. Then we come across our expletive. So we wonder something. And that something is the noun clause. So if you can say we wonder something, subject, verb, direct object is pattern 7. And then we do our pedestal in that slot and we diagram. He is our subject, saw is our action verb, saw what? Angels is the direct object. Actually is our adverb. What angels did he see? The ones in trees. So that goes under angels to modify that. And then we put our expletive if above because it doesn't really carry any weight in the sentence. Subject, action verb, direct object is pattern 7. Whew, that is it. I'm out of breath. I hope this makes sense. I know this is kind of a whirlwind, rushed explanation, but if you go back, look at your sentences, break things up. The first thing I do with these sentences is I find that red flag word and identify my noun clause. And then I start working piece by piece, work on one clause at a time, the other clause at a time, and then see how they're fitting together. How is that noun clause functioning? And then it seems to become at least manageable. We'll continue to work with noun clauses and we're going to add some other clauses. So again, please let me know if you don't understand this, if you're not comfortable with this, and we can work through it together.